It's St. Patty's Day. I have to have some shenanigans in there somewhere. Okay, B4 is our board member comments. Mr. Brown, can we start with you, sir? Okay. Moving to Mr. Schwartz.
Just real brief comments about the chess champions. So we spent a lot of cycles on athletics and academics, and things like chess require foresight and preparation and really understanding what's happening around you, not just the move you're making. And ironically, last week, and I'm happy to pass this around if anybody's interested, I received this photo, which is our foreign exchange student from Czech Republic who was here in 2010, and his 8-year-old son, who's a chess champion in a small town called Carlsbad, just outside of Prague in Czech Republic. So I immediately sent him a photo of ours, which are much better than theirs. But the bigger point is, we are doing some things that transcend the bubble we live in, and even the bubble our country lives in. And we all know we live in a global world. We all see and read and hear every day about the important things that are happening around us. And sometimes we have things like this that show how dedicated and bright both our kids and our staff are, that can still bring us all together. And this little kid actually speaks pretty good, better English than his dad, who lived here a year. But the important thing is, he can play chess online against our kids. And so if the team wants to do that, I will make that happen. It's very fun for them, and it's good to start having us foster global relations about things bigger than what we read about that may or may not be true. So kudos to the team for taking something that may not be top of mind every day and making it top of mind for us. That's all.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Dr. Schenk.
Okay. I attended 2 committee meetings this month, PCAC, which is the D38 Parent and Community Advisory Committee, and I also attended the Strategic Priority number 2 meeting, which was academic excellence. And I attended last week's work session and board retreat. I've got a few comments about each. I'm going to make them really brief. There are usually minutes up for these meetings, so if you want more information, and all of the board members are involved in the D38 meetings, and there's a lot of them, and we learn a lot through these meetings. At PCAC, President Upchurch discussed the multi-year plan for the upcoming Career and Innovation Center, the CIC, and you'll hear that that acronym said a lot. And this will be addressed in more detail in board item C3. I also want to just tell you that I'm thrilled about the Career and Innovation Center and the opportunities that it provides for our students. I deeply appreciate our board members' unity in making this project a reality and getting it moving. I reported at PCAC on the vote to demolish Grace Best, and we talked about the rationale and reasons for doing so. We talked about the superintendent resignation and the superintendent search options, and as you can imagine, that was a difficult conversation with our community. The PCAC committee includes D38 administrators, teachers, staff, parents, and community members, and they asked many questions, and I got saved by the bell because it was snowing and really cold and blowing that night. But something wonderful happened as a result of our discussion. PCAC is an advisory committee to the board, and they decided afterwards, after we discussed that, since we didn't want to take up the whole meeting and we pretty much took up the whole meeting, that they wanted to get together again and discuss this amongst themselves and provide us with some advice. I'll talk about that in a moment, the advice they provided to us. The strategic priority number 2, academic excellence meeting, discussed tactics for improving math and literacy achievement in 2024 and 2025. And I will continue to attend these meetings on behalf of the board and report on them in future board meetings. But I have to tell you, I'm a instructional technologist with a background in learning science, deep background in learning science. And I was, number one, I was just felt wonderful because I understood what they were talking about. The words made total sense to me, and it was delightful to see what they were talking about and to have various people talking about, well, but how would, you know, that's a good idea, but what about this? And Dr. Brahm, who's head of assessments here, writing this all down on the screen as we're discussing. I didn't discuss much of anything. I was listening, wondering whether I would understand, and I did, and that felt really, really good. And you, again, there's information about our strategic priorities online, and if you're wondering what we're doing, we'll be reporting out on those things as well in the future. And lastly, I want to talk about last week's board retreat and work session. Both PCAC and the Staff Collaboration Committee came to provide us with very specific guidance on the search process for a superintendent, which was great. It was a great start and helped us understand what our community thinks. In addition, we have received written guidance from LPMS faculty and others, including teachers and community members. And many of board members here have heard from people in the community, from teachers, from faculty, from staff as well. So we have already heard a great deal of targeted guidance from members of the D38 community about their desired approach for choosing our next superintendent. And it was especially gratifying to me as one member of the board that the chief guidance from these different groups, many different groups, was very closely aligned and pointed in the same direction. I'm hoping that our board members can be similarly aligned as the community guidance was when we discussed the superintendent search in item number D1. And that's me.
Thank you, Dr. Schenk. Mr. Norris.
I got a loud voice, and it echoes. So nothing to report. Nothing to report for Gelt. However, I got quite a bit to report for my relationship with the Monument Academy folks. So Monument Academy hired its new elementary principal, Miss Jessie Davis. She's currently the secondary assistant principal at MA. She's done a fantastic job building relationships with students, family, and staff to support the growth of the East Campus. She's pretty excited to take on the strategic plan for the elementary school, and it's already hit the ground running with the elementary team. Congratulations to the middle and high school jazz band and John Patterson, who attended the Pikes Peak Jazz Festival at Palmer High School on March 13th. The band earned the highest superior rating, a great showing among the 20 schools participating in the festival. MA students took first and second place in the Optimist Writing Regional Winners for the 2025 contest. The first place winner will advance to the next phase of the competition. Congratulations to Mila Nafifaroff, who won first place, and Caitlin Heiberger, who won second place. MA had student winners of the Pike Pikes Peak Regional Science Fair on February 22nd. Congratulations to the following students. Bianca Bukowski, she won Junior Physical Science first place, Old Town Bike Shop Award, Society for Women Engineers Junior Award, Thermo Fisher Junior Innovator Award, U.S. Metric Association Award, and she's invited to the State Science and Engineering Fair in early April. Helen Ostrowski, she won Junior Life Science second place, Cross and Family Award, and she's invited to State Science and Engineering Fair in April. And Eli Rufinot placed Junior Engineering Math and Computer Science. He placed fourth. So 3 juniors, Josh Deniston, Serena Carell, and Grace Dunstan attended last month's National Character and Leadership Symposium at the Air Force Academy, and this event offered the students valuable insights into leadership and personal development. They will bring back the knowledge and experiences gained to share with their peers, fostering a culture of growth and inspiration within the MA community.
Nice.
That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well, I want to start by saying happy St. Patty's Day again. It's always one of my favorites because it's sunny out, it's springtime. It kind of is a reminder of things are going to start turning green. And I mean, we're in Colorado, so flowers are far from being sprouting for a while. But it is springtime in the Rockies, and across the state of Colorado, this is absolutely one of the busiest times of years for school districts, with calendars full of teachers, students, administrators, and Board of Education's working towards testing, March Madness, honoring talented students and staff with performances, state finals, prom, prep work for the end of the school year, graduation, staff and bus driver appreciation week in May, and of course, the very big task of budgets. And then of course there's always the sneaky surprises of windstorms and snowstorms. So happy spring. And I just want to remind everyone that even though it's a busy time, to just take time to breathe and take care of yourselves, and whether it's physically or mentally or with your family, but just remember to take care of yourselves. And given today's holiday, I thought it would be fun to share a couple of my favorite Irish blessings. I have a little bit of Irish in me. My maiden name is Ellis, and that's English Irish. So first of all, I want to remind us all that may all of our troubles be little ones, and all of our little ones be trouble-free, and that there isn't enough room in your mind for both worry and faith. You must decide which one will live there. I actually have that card that's on my desk in my office, and I look at it often. Finally, I want to remind everybody that the dreams you hold dearest, may the dreams you hold dearest be those which come true, the kindness you spread keep returning to you. May your blessings outnumber the shamrocks that grow, and may trouble avoid you wherever you go. So that's my little Irish blessing. And it made me start thinking that there's a lot, with all that's going on around us, both nationally and community-wide. I thought that I wanted to share my gratitude for the blessings that we have right in front of us here in our Tri-Lakes community. Thank you to parents and families for raising such amazing kids. Thank you to our educators and our staff for your talent and your dedication. And thank you to our community members for your passion and your engagement. And I want to say thank you to our town of Monument for inviting so many of us in the Tri-Lakes region to the table as they're formulating a master plan and vision that can serve our Tri-Lakes region with sustainability and benefit to all of us. And I applaud the openness and desire for all of us, from Palmer Lake to Monument to D38 to the El Paso County Board of Directors, for the desire to work as a community together. And the county also invited us to engage in their vision for the traffic that's on Woodmore Drive. And for any of us that drives Woodmore, that road has become a lot busier in the years that I've been here. And I, as not just a community member, But as a parent also, I've been advocating for a crossing light or a solution that aligns with our safe routes to schools and makes our roadways safer for our students along that route. So I was appreciative that they had that meeting at the barn. And I also was appreciative that Palmer Lake Elementary School opened up their doors with hospitality for our board members to go, and it's, even if it's just a few hours each time, to just see our students in action and to visit with open dialogue with our teachers. It's a great reminder of the reason that we are here, and that is for our students. And I hope others have a chance to enjoy the afternoon. Speaking of our students, yesterday was the Stars of Tomorrow talent show that Kiwanis put on, and I hope folks had a chance. And to the moms and dads out there and the coaches and the teachers, you have so much to be proud of. Those were amazing kids. And then I also wanted to share my updates. SEAC, we met for the Special Education Advisory Committee on Wednesday, and Inclusive Colorado shared post-secondary information and opportunities for our differently abled students that are seeking post-secondary college education and experiences and the services that are available to them. And I also want to remind everybody, don't forget that the Alorium Day nominations, I always say it wrong. It's Aliorum Day Awards. They're open right now, and April 24th at 7 o'clock is the award ceremony. So I encourage everybody to engage, and if those that don't know or have not heard of that, it is nominating somebody. There's 3 categories: a student, a staff member, and a community member that goes above and beyond and does something different and special for our differently abled students in our community. And then I also, to Ms. Shank's point, Dr. Shank's point, I wanted to echo thank you to our internal committee members and a thank you to our external community partners. All of your input and your invitations and support and your feedback, it opens doors, it builds bridges, it creates opportunities for collaboration and inspiration for the excellence that benefits our schools and our kids and our community and our world. So I just wanted to share cheer and thank yous today. So that's all I have.
Okay. Well, I am privileged to introduce our wonderful students from Lewis Palmer Middle School that are here with us this evening. We have Kathy Stevenson and Kaylee Klasky, both who are 8th graders, and both who plan to attend Lewis Palmer High School next year. They are also both student ambassadors at the school, so they'll tell us a little bit about what that means. Kathy was recently stage manager for the school play at the middle school, and she enjoys children and babysitting when she's not in school. And Kaylee enjoys ballet and also theater and is a member of the Girls on the Run team. So I'll pass it over to you girls to tell us a little bit about what it means to be a student ambassador, and then you have a presentation to share with us this evening. And you can just use the clicker that we gave you to advance through the slides.
All right. You want us to go up there?
You
can-
wherever you're comfortable. So,
Yeah, you can present from where you are, or if you're more comfortable standing, you can do that too.
So in our school, we are both ambassadors, which means that we are a big priority to our school. We help with all the community service. We learn how to be leaders, how to grow up, how to help all kinds of people. Kaylee?
We participate in different activities. We make posters for the school. We do recycling days on Wednesdays. And we just do multiple tasks around the school to help.
Yep.
All right, and are you ready to share your presentation this evening?
Yes. So we are going to be talking about our middle school.
So for sports, our wrestling team, they just finished. We had 74 wrestlers, 15 were women. They placed 3rd in the NPAC. Our football season this year had a record of, for 7th grade, 3-1-1, and 8th grade, 4-1. And then our teams that just started are track and Girls on the Run.
Girls on the Run is kind of like track, but it's not timed. It's about learning how to make friendships with each other and how you can advance as a person. I would like to talk about our choir. They performed Where is Light by Sylvie and Niska Banja, which is a Russian song, and they did get to play the kazoos, which was so much fun. They played really, really nice, and they just sound really, really good. They're really talented.
Our drama performance, Season of Light, everybody participated and learned a bunch of different things.
They learned memorization skills, and it was a drama slash little bit of comedy, which is really, really fun to watch. And then we would like to talk our Spirit Week that we made with Make-A-Wish. We helped a little girl named Harper, and her wish was to go to Disney World. We did a Spirit Week. We had different days, and the student council would raise money to see if you dressed up, and we raised $2,443 with 85 cents for her to go to the trip. She is going sometime this year. I'm pretty sure they haven't made sure of a date yet, but they're really, really excited to go.
Our sixth grade open house we held recently, and so for the sixth graders, they get to come to the school and get a tour and learn their classes. And in the cafeteria, there's pictures of examples of the photography class, and then there's different tables where you can sign up for different sports, and it just prepares the students more for coming to middle school.
And then we have an ambassador's trip to the elementary schools. We got to go to different elementary schools where we talked to the students, the new sixth graders that are coming in, and they got to ask all their questions. They got to know about the classes in our schools, and it was really fun, and it was such a both ways a fun experience for both students. Our elementary students got to be less nervous about middle school. They got to be more excited instead of nervous. They got to play games with us, and they showed their competitive side, which was really fun to watch. And we had so much fun because we played games with them, and it was such a fun trip to just go and see the kids so excited about going there. And I think that's it.
Excellent. And just to let you both know and reiterate, while we're going through our meeting tonight, if you have any questions or if you want to pipe in, obviously you don't vote, but if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. And if I chime in and say, hey, what do you guys think? And you're like, I don't know, it's okay. Ms. Wetstein.
We're just so happy that you're here this evening, so thank you for joining us, girls. Oh, thank you. All right, Ms. Wood is pulling up the slides for the superintendent update this evening. We have a lot of happenings around the district, so these are just a few of them that I'll highlight this evening. This year, speaking of Make-A-Wish, Palmer Ridge also had a Make-A-Wish week. They were supporting 10-year-old Raylan, whose wish is to visit Hawaii. So to support her dream, staff members at Palmer Ridge took on staff from Air Academy High School in a spirited basketball game to benefit their Make-A-Wish week. Our PR team put up a strong fight, but ultimately fell to the cadets. Great work, Palmer Ridge. We are proud of your work, your week-long fundraising efforts that had a goal of bringing in $22,000. Our ice hockey team and all of our basketball teams advanced to state but faced tough competition. Meanwhile, our speech and debate teams from both schools had an impressive showing with 2 state champions from LP and 1 from PR. Both teams had a strong presence in the finals, with LP securing 2nd place overall and PR finishing 7th. And our unified basketball team, which includes students from LPPR and Transition Services, had an incredible season, finishing second at state. Players described the experience as amazing and emphasized the importance of teamwork, sportsmanship, and supporting one another. Congratulations to our athletes, and I hope you will mark your calendars to join us at the All Abilities Classic on Wednesday this week, March 19th at 5 o'clock at Palmer Ridge High School. And yesterday it was mentioned, I had the privilege of experiencing the Stars of Tomorrow talent show, and what amazing students we have. The talent show took place with 20 acts from all ages and representatives from many D38 schools. Congratulations to the winners, and thank you to the Kiwanis Club for their amazing partnership to make this event possible. We appreciate their support for our D38 talented students. Our middle school bands hosted a concert on March 11th, and at the end of last week, our 8th grade symphonic band received an excellent rating following their performance at the Colorado Band Masters Association's Middle School Festival in Denver. Congratulations to our middle school musicians. And Bear Creek has an annual STEAM night, which this year included 200 students showcasing their scientific discoveries and problem-solving skills. It was a full day and evening of activities with everything from a planetarium and rocketry to robotics and cave simulations. Our Homeschool Enrichment Academy hosted their showcase event last week for the 10th year in a row to give students the opportunity to share with families everything they have worked on throughout the year. The evening included a Renaissance theme and highlighted student work in art, drama, and music. And the first grade musical production at Lewis Palmer Elementary School emphasized the importance of music education in fostering cognitive and emotional development in children. Research shows that students engaged in music education often experience improved academic performance in reading, writing, and math. The performance ended with a fun and energetic reel, getting parents on their feet and moving alongside their children. Ms. Upchurch mentioned our recent Monument Conversations event. We were honored to participate in and contribute to the town of Monument hosting a conversation to drive their strategic planning. The town of Monument thanked D38 for helping host the event and said it was successful due to the relationship between D38 and the larger Monument community. They applauded our support and looked forward to future opportunities to connect with D38. And we have some kudos to celebrate across the district. Shout out to Sarah Whittaker at Bear Creek Elementary School, Colleen Roy from Lewis Palmer Elementary School, and Michael Brom, who works district-wide as our district assessment director. And we wanted to make sure that everyone knows about our upcoming district-wide art show, which will take place at Lolly's Tasting Room here in Monument. You can see the viewing times here for elementary school and then middle and high school. And these events will then be followed by a showcase of all of the winners here at the district office on April 15th. And finally this evening, it is my honor to introduce our newest principal at Lewis Palmer High School, Mr. Jeffrey Zick. So I'll go ahead and just say a few words about Mr. Zick, and then we'll invite him to the podium to say a few words. We are pleased to announce Jeffrey Zick will join the D38 team to serve as principal of Lewis Palmer High School. Jeffrey comes to our district from Ellicott High School, where he has served as principal since 2019. His background includes 18 years of experience in education, mostly in the Pikes Peak region. Jeffrey shared, accepting the role of principal at Lewis Palmer High School is both an honor and responsibility. My goal is not only to maintain the high standards of excellence, but to inspire new heights of growth, innovation, and collaboration for all. So everyone, please join me in welcoming Mr. Zick to our school district. And we have family members in the audience to support as well. So thank you for being here this evening. Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you for the introduction, but this has been a great honor. I've been really excited about the process and getting to this moment. I just got to brag on your district a little bit before I go. Is that whole table over there? They've been great from hiring to now. They've been very welcoming, very communicative, just been right there making this transition great. Your district leaders at each building have texted me or called me or emailed me throughout the process. For someone coming from the outside, that's pretty special. You know, you come in, you feel welcome, you feel good about the hire. I was always had my eye on this. We live in the district. My wife, Tracy over there, is a PE teacher at Kilmer. I have Cooper. You want to wave, Cooper? And Hunter's birthday is tomorrow, and Morgan decided to come up with me, but they're 4th, 3rd, and kindergarten at Kilmer. So this is always a special place to me, and an opportunity to come here is a blessing. But just coming here, have proved it through the roof. I think Ms. Wetstein, how well she's been staying with me throughout this whole process and trying to get to there. One big advantage I've had is I come from a 4-day-a-week work week at Ellicott, and now I can work here on Fridays through the spring. So Bridget's been great, and trying to get to know the school district has been a big advantage. And one of the biggest fears coming into a new job is that institutional knowledge, and that's been growing throughout this last 3-4 weeks. And I'm just so thankful right now. So I just feel really thankful about this opportunity, and want to thank all you guys for all the great things you guys do to make our jobs better too. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, and welcome to the district.
Welcome.
Lewis Palmer High School it's a special school, so thank you. And I like your green hair.
All right, that concludes my update this evening.
Thank you so much. And again, welcome to D38 and welcome to Lewis Palmer High School. Okay, our first item of discussion is C1, Priority 4 Update, and that's our Operations and Facilities Planning. I'd like to invite Mr. Ridgway and Ms. Andrews up to the podium for this presentation.
Hello, Brett Ridgway, Chief Business Officer. I'm going to turn this over to Melissa for her to provide the presentation here. But as you know, I work with both the finance and the operations teams, so that's why with Priority 5 last month and Priority 4 this month, I'm kind of affiliated with both of them. But really, Melissa and the team there, the action team there, are the folks that have really contributed to this. And I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Good evening. All right. Is it this one? There we go. So as we're looking at our vision, mission, and strategic plan, we're going to be focusing tonight on the operations and facility planning. The operations team commits to providing safe, clean, and functional facilities that meet the needs of students and staff, fostering an environment that is conducive to learning. We work intentionally to ensure our infrastructure and physical assets are well-designed and equipped to meet the educational needs of the future, and that our students have access to healthy meals and dependable transportation. So we're going to have 3 outcomes this evening we're going to discuss, and our first one is going to be to extend the facility condition. So by fall of 2027, we will improve transparency in the capital asset process by publishing current, live, visible assessment of all conditions that indicate clear priorities for continual advancement of operational performance and projected lifespan. We'll be doing that by creating a working document with identified capital needs that outline the number of projects by school and priority level with ballpark costs. And we will also be documenting the processes and outline them based on what's done at the school-based staff versus our central departments. So the action steps are going to be identifying the capital deferred needs by means of thorough building and site walks with key staff, gathering information from building users, which are principals, building managers, maintenance techs, and establishing system replacement cycles. We'll define and document school-based building manager, maintenance requirements, and our central facilities level maintenance. Our second outcome is going to facility capacity and utilization, future community and facility plans, which is going to be our asset return on investment. So by fall of 2027, we will have an accessible, aligned system of demographic projections and facility use analysis to inform partner with key stakeholders in the pursuit of clear strategies and accommodate programming and growth. This will help in having conversations with our stakeholders, give board presentations, and our board decisioning. And as an example, when we're working with developments that are coming in and looking for the proper location for a new school site, having the background is going to assist with things like that. We're going to be doing a creation of working document that, with identified needs, that outlines a number of projects by school and priority level with ballpark costs. And the action steps are to master plan the downtown property, the one we're sitting on that runs from here all the way down to transportation, and to incorporate in the 2025-26 budget development. We're also going to identify building capacities, both design and functional, and evaluate space against enrollment with projections out 5 years to analyze the impact of new developments and trends in enrollment. And we're also going to look at that return on investment, how much our taxpayers have had to put into our buildings to help maintain them. And our third outcome is operational performance aligned with district strategic plan. By fall of 2027, we will establish clear and consistent metrics that will guide discussions about our operational performance and how they align with and support the strategic priorities of the district. Each operational department will identify specific metrics that have both utility to their operation and usefulness for compositing with other departments and eventual single measure. Because we are so unique in what we do, we have different measurements: technology, transportation, nutrition services, grounds, and facilities. We'll build a matrix that supports the proposed index. So our actions, operational metrics are identified with intended interpretation to strategic value. Process for accumulating the data points are established, and the composite operational performance index is proposed. Any questions?
Questions? Mr. Schwartz.
So maybe a comment more for the public than for the staff and the board. I'm the sponsor of this particular strategic initiative, and Ms. Andrews has a lot on her plate right now. So number one, thank you for putting this together in a format that is absorbable and retainable. Secondly, there's a lot of stuff here in simple form. But the bottom line is, since Ms. Andrews has come to the district, we are migrating towards a far more professional view of what assets do we have, how are they being utilized, what is their lifespan, and how do we maximize that without impacting the daily operations of our staff and our students. So I wanted to applaud you for that, and we're excited to migrate to these metrics. And the last thing is, somebody at some juncture is going to say, wow, fall of 2027, how long till that comes about? And the fact of the matter is, this team's done this work before, and it takes a couple of seasons or years to build the trends once you have the metrics in place to really understand what's happening. And everybody who's lived here a while recognizes that there's some small demographic shifts happening in this region or area. And our trick is to try to skate to where the puck is going to be instead of chasing it around the rink after we know where it's gone. And that's what this will allow us to do. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I like that analogy.
It's almost Stanley Cup time, you know.
Team, any other questions or comments? On these priorities and these action steps and the outcome measures, to Mr. Schwartz's point, and thank you for bringing that up, fall of 2027, you have a lot on your plate right now. We got you going. And so I want to thank you because I know there's only so much in capacity. And I also want to thank your family because I imagine that you take your work home with you. Where are we? Do we have measurables currently as we're working through these? So
We do have a head start, and so as we look at that capital process, and you'll see a little bit of that tonight, we did our first full year this year of identifying capital needs. We're still working through some things like replacement cycles of items such as HVAC units. And so we'll have our first iteration tonight. You'll see our priority ones that we're hoping to have funded through our capital projects for next school year. Trying to remember what other ones were, sorry. Okay, and the facility capital capacity and utilization, you saw a presentation that was looking at how the buildings were designed, how they were being used, and what we could actually, get out of them as far as maximum efficiency. And so that will also start to come to you in the form of putting our student data to that. We're going to look at those 5-year projections against that information with space and capacity. So we do have some irons in the fire and starting. The next group on our outcome 3, which is the all of the operations departments, we are working on those, I believe, next week. Is that next week?
This week,
This week.
actually. Wednesday.
All right, so we're going to start getting, it's moving too fast. We're going to start getting all of the departments in alignment, looking at their KPIs and how that's going to look for everybody. So that is in the works.
So to Melissa's point, we are bringing our full district leadership team together, which encompasses all of these smaller strategic planning groups on a periodic basis. And we'll be doing that this Wednesday to review some of these action plans as well as our key performance measures for each of the strategic priorities.
Gotcha. Anything else? Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
I will no longer be on the board by then, but I am excited to continue to follow and watch how this evolves. So thank you. Okay, our next item, you guys can stay right on up here. Our next discussion is Homeschool Enrichment Academy and Transition Services Update. Mr. Ridgway and Ms. Andrews.
Thank you. So I don't have any attachments into this agenda item. What I have here is an excerpt of the communication that we sent out to the stakeholder groups for these two communities at the end of February, and kind of updating them at that time of kind of what the angles we were pursuing for each of their programs, and wanted to update you here and then continue updating them as we get further into this process and see what we learn about the various options here. With transition services, you can see that finding an existing facility we can rent or purchase or remodel for their purposes has been a kind of our overall goal with that. We have looked at existing space for both of these programs that we could potentially seek to remodel for the purposes. Our work on that so far, as you'll see what I stated here, that not looking as promising as we had hoped. So that option of an existing facility that we had looked at so far that could be a full acquisition and a full remodel is turning out to be too costly because that facility would just need to basically be gutted and rebuilt from the inside out. And so that's not really going to be a good source for us. For transition services, though, what's really coming into focus is the opportunity to use space in the CIC as a good stepping stone to their permanent facility. And we have had received some information support from Nunn Construction, who's doing the general contracting work on the CIC, and getting some confirmation with Hollis & Miller as our architects for that as well. And that what we can do with that is basically spend some money that might otherwise go to rent expense, to rent temporary space, and actually invest in a portion of the CIC for the healthcare area, which is part of the phase 2 of CIC anyway, and use that money instead, again, using it for rent, being able to invest in that space and use that space as transition needs it, and then be able to leave it for the healthcare program as it spins up, hopefully in a year or two. So that's kind of looking like a very good scenario right now. And then while we still consider to develop plans for a long-term scenario for transition. Is that you, Alicia? No. Time's up.
I won't touch that.
The leprechauns are in the room.
For the homeschool program, same thing, because we again had looked at some existing space that we were wondering if it could be available for purchase and remodel, and that and similar, that's not turning out as we had hoped. So we're continuing to look for new build scenarios for a long-term home, and then pressing in a little bit more in terms of communicating with the fire marshal as our fallback scenario of HSEA remaining in that space as we go into the fall semester, as we time out when a permanent solution could be available for that. And so that is turning, again, we don't have any formal recommendations at this point, but that's kind of what we are seeing and as kind of a very likely scenario right now. Mm-hmm. Melissa, what would you like to add for either or both?
So the use of the Grace Best building for one additional year is the max we can do. It's not a long-term option by any means. I just want to make sure that that's clear. It's just an agreement the fire marshal has made on certain conditions, and some of those conditions are to get all of the storage in that building out. And there will be portions of that building sectioned off where there will not be accessibility in any way, shape, or form. So they're pretty strict, and we are going to be walking the building with him the week after spring break. And he will start pointing out what we can and can't access for that.
Go ahead.
Just a thought and a comment, both for the board and the public. There's a cost associated with keeping that building open. Mm-hmm. There's a fixed cost, and then there's an opportunity cost. The opportunity cost is in the somewhat likely event, given its age and condition, that something else would happen. We would be diverting capital for things that we had planned in order to take care of that in the event that it needed to be maintained or repaired immediately, which would be the likely case. So as we think through this, we also should consider both the trade-off costs and the opportunity costs. I know the staff is looking deeply into this, but it's important that we consider that as well as members of the community and a board.
Thank you. I think in general, the point remains that we want to find better space for them than they have now. And if working with the fire marshal gives us the opportunity to put more emphasis on what the future permanent space will be, rather than looking for temporary space that might require then 2 moves. I think that's a good scenario that I don't know that I would want to say. I appreciate Melissa saying, for next year, but I really would hope that we'd be pursuing something that could be turned around within the year. That might mean a move during the school year, which is never fun, but again, getting to permanent space as quickly as possible is really going to be our best option to pursue, I believe.
I have a question. Preliminarily, without having the marshal here right now, do you have a sense of which areas are probably or most likely or definitely going to be cordoned off?
I do have some ideas based on a walk that I did with him not too long ago. And so very likely that the northwest wing, which has many wet rooms, is going to be one of the areas. The library that connects the new to the old will most likely be another area. And where Barobotics and Monumental Impact are currently residing would be another area.
No surprises for me.
Okay.
And what is the fire marshal's concern?
Mostly the moisture content and the Monumental Impact in that area now has new leaks in it that are fresh to the last few months, so almost every one of those areas is very wet.
Exactly my point. And this will continue.
I have another question, and it kind of goes to the CIC building, but I had asked this, and the 1988 part, the new portion, that when I looked at the diagram, it's small, right? It's 8 classrooms upstairs, I think 8 or 10 classrooms 8.
I want to say it was 6 upstairs.
And then the 2 bigger areas. Yes, yeah. 6, and then the 2 areas on the end. And then downstairs is the library that's being cordoned off, and those 2 spaces where our transition students and the cafeteria. That equals about 12,000 square feet per floor. So the footprint is about 12,000 square feet for the footprint. Are those walls, I mean, obviously we've made a decision, but when I looked at those walls when we walked through, I'm no architect, but they're not very movable spaces. They're not easy to change.
As far as like a renovation,
Yeah,
I want to say that a good portion of them are not load-bearing, so there is potential to
Okay.
move some of them, but there are going to be some that are load-bearing, which we would not be able to move.
load bearing, that's the word I was looking for, thank you. And then the CIC building, the footprint is almost 20, well, it's 20, almost 25,000 square feet.
Correct.
With about 20,000 on the bottom floor that opens it up for manufacturing and welding and robotics. And then the upper floor, if I understand it correctly, will be where computer sciences will go, which is about 5,000 square feet. Do I understand that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood and was not remembering incorrectly.
So one of our community members is saying it's less than 20,000 square feet. It's close to 25, right?
For the CIC building,
Yeah.
it is, yes.
Okay.
And that's the
Do we know why
Post-
that's
post-
not stated correctly?
So I'm not sure where that number came from, but even when they had it up for sale, it was listed at 25,000 square feet. There is a lower and an upper level, and there
And that's
was.
what I remember too, so I'm just
Yeah.
not sure where that came from.
And it's a possibility that was prior, they had an addition on that. So it could have been the original building before they had an addition to it.
Just so we're discussing relevant numbers, is the 25,000 the post-TI figure? In other words, is that usable space when the TI is finished?
So total, yes. We're going, just because it's a big open space, there's not a lot of nooks and crannies that are hidden. There's also phase 1 and phase 2. So for phase 1, it will not be 25,000 of usable space. Just the upstairs IT area would be a phase 2. And then also the healthcare area could potentially be a phase 2, but could also be the location for the transitions program. And we can do some finishing work of flooring and ceiling tiles and paint, and that would make it ready for them. And that space is slightly larger than what they currently have available to them at Grace Best.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I have the numbers right to Mr. Brown's point. What will the phase 1 square footage be, and what will the completed square footage be, roughly?
So the footprint is probably 20 to 22,000 square feet on the ground floor. And really, all of that would be usable with phase 1, assuming if we do this program with the transition services there. The upper story, which is, again, it's only on a very small part of the building, and it's probably only about 3,000 square feet or so. And that would be clearly part of phase 2. And not cordoned off, not like the space that we're talking about here that would have to be cordoned off. They would just not be finished out to the program design that we're going to be using there for the computer science program.
Okay,
Does that
so
help?
I think the answers are 22 and 3.
That's what we're kind of
Roughly.
estimating. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Does that suffice for what you were trying to get to? Okay, thanks.
So what's the square footage of the healthcare slash maybe transition space?
We're thinking, again, that's 2,500 square feet, something like that.
Okay,
Just speaking from memory.
okay.
So I didn't mean to take us down a rabbit hole. I was mostly curious about the square footage of, what I was getting at was what the square footage of what transitions has now versus what the potential is that they can have and temporarily and going beyond. Because what they have now isn't sufficient and doesn't meet their needs. So I was curious about what we would need to make sure that transitions. That's what I was getting at, was what do we need to make sure that transitions has sufficient space. So, sorry. Any other thoughts or questions? Nope. Okay, well, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Anything else we need to know?
No,
All
just
right.
more to come as we continue to work on this.
Okay, then let's move on to priority number 2, update, which is C3, our Career and Innovation Center. We would like to invite Ms. McAllister up. It was kind of a segue into that. We took away half of your conversation already.
Well, and I'm hoping you got all of the square footage questions out of the way, because those are not questions I'm prepared to answer for you. Good to see you tonight. Jess McAllister, Director of Innovative Programs. Always excited to share with you an update about the Career and Innovation Campus, or Center, and we'll just take it to the next slide. So as you know, I always start the presentations that I give with basically the timeline that we're under as far as programming is concerned. So again, Melissa does a great job of running with the facilities and the renovation. I'm really running with the programming piece. And so, since we've last met, there have been quite a few things that have happened. So one of them being we have some more solid numbers. I won't say that they're 100% solid as far as student enrollment is concerned, so we're excited to share that with you. Give a little bit of a partnership update, and then an exciting event that's coming. But before I get started, I'm realizing that we have middle school representatives here, so I'm going to just back up a little bit and say, just for the broader audience, what the Career and Innovation Campus will be. So this is going to be its own facility by which we're going to have CTE program expansion. And so when I say CTE, I mean Career and Technical Education. You mentioned earlier an event where there were some photographs kind of up and around the room for, to entice sixth graders to maybe take those classes. Well, that's a CTE class. So too is Gateway to Technology. And then we also have biomedical sciences at the middle school. So thinking about expanding those pathways for 11th and 12th graders. So with all that said, I'll go ahead and jump into our enrollment projections. When I was here back in January, I had shared a little bit about some focus groups that I had visited at both of the high schools and some preliminary numbers that we had. If you can remember, those preliminary numbers really were, we had 89 students at that time who had expressed interest. And so what you'll see on this slide is that we actually have 171 students who are interested in taking courses at the Career and Innovation Campus next year. 86 of them are in advanced manufacturing, so that means that we're going to be running 3 sections of Intro to Welding and 1 of Welding Technology 1. A large number of students were interested in welding, so that was wonderful. We had 75 students that were interested in a combination of the engineering classes that we're going to be offering. So we have aerospace, civil, architectural, design, and development, and then electrical engineering. So those will all be happening at the Career and Innovation Campus as well. And then you'll see 10 for the skilled trades. We want to put a little caveat on that and say we think there are way more than 10. It's just that the way that the course is named inside of Infinite Campus, it's kind of a misnomer and pretty confusing. So we anticipate that number will go up, and with that then will also be the total number of students. With that to be said, though, I will say we have, of those student enrollments, 58% of them come from Lewis Palmer and 42% of them come from Palmer Ridge, which is great because when we first met back in January, it was looking to be a little bit more skewed. So we're really excited that that's kind of leveled out. And all in, 171 student requests between our current sophomores and juniors represents about 15% of our student body in that area. So we perceive these numbers will go up. There will be some fluctuations and some adjustments as other courses are introduced into the schedules and students have to make choices. So those are some of the enrollment projections that we currently have. When I end this presentation, I'll go back to that timeline, and what you'll know is that this then leads into some really great conversations about transportation and about staffing and about scheduling. So we're already into those conversations, and we're happy to report back to you next time we meet again about what those look like. Partnership updates, we have just our numbers here as far as our pipeline is concerned, reminding you that introduction really is just those introductory conversations that we're having with people regarding what we're doing, trying to garner some interest. Engagement is where they start to really kind of have some intentional discussions with the leadership of their organization to see how they might be able to partner. And then implementation is where we actually have ink that is drying. And so I've been saying for a while, I've been holding off on you as far as who that second one is, and I'll be telling you here in just a moment who that is. We're excited to announce that. Interestingly enough, as we were putting this slide together, Nathan Edwards and myself, we kind of had a debate because it's really hard to kind of disaggregate the engagement category. I will say that I could make a case that we maybe have 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 in the implementation phase. But again, I'm going to keep you waiting, and we'll announce those when the ink is dried. Here's just some trends as far as how those numbers have kind of matriculated over time. You'll see some movement from introduction to engagement into implementation throughout time because those conversations just continue to evolve. And we have gotten some great feedback about our sponsorship packet. So the next slide I'm going to show you has some new tiers of our sponsorship packet, as well as our first amplifier sponsor. So we're happy to announce that Nunn Construction is excited to partner with us. Their commitment to us is over a 3-year time period with $10,000 per year to really pour into our supplies, our materials, and things of that sort. In addition to that, they're happy to partner with our educators and come into our spaces as well. So we're very excited about that. And that leads me to some funding pursuits. So we're also actively writing grants. Since we've last met, we've submitted one called the Excellent Grant. That's from the National Science Foundation. You can see on this slide, there's a depiction of the amount essentially that we'd be getting, when the closing date was, and when the award date will come. These are constantly changing. I will say the CTE CHIPS Challenge is overseen by the U.S. Department of Education, and so that's gone a little bit quiet as of late, but we will continue to just plug away and find opportunities and apply for them as they present themselves. I currently am writing a grant, and so too is Nathan Edwards, and we'll update you on those after we've submitted them. And then just a little note below, we really are trying to be intentional about the equipment requests that we're making for each of these grants. So by and large, the pursuits that we're after is procuring the equipment that's going to go in these spaces, which we know comes at a cost. And so we're really trying to diversify the funding stream for the piece of equipment. Our goal is to ask at least 3 different entities for the same piece of equipment and hope that one emerges. So that's kind of what that last line is about. Here are some different supporters that we have right now. There are some new ones on the screen. I'll draw your attention to them. Kilroy's Workshop is one of them. They are a nonprofit forging, blacksmithing, welding company that is out in eastern Colorado Springs, and so they've been really great partners for us. And you see UC Health up there as well, so those conversations are emerging. Last but not least, bringing you back to this timeline, so I kind of mentioned earlier, we are now in a part of really talking about staffing, getting into some transportation conversations, and then bringing on the staff to start really doing some training and getting them up to speed. Of course, this timeline does not end on May 1st, which is the last date that you see there, but that is when we will start the next process, which is really going to be procuring some of that equipment, getting it installed, and getting trained up on it. And the last slide I do have for you is that we're excited to be hosting a wall breaking ceremony. So because this is not a new construction, so we won't be having shovels and digging up dirt, we will have sledgehammers, and we will be assembling at the Career and Innovation Campus. More information is going to be coming. We'll be emailing that out soon, but we wanted to just get this in front of you so you could save the date. There will be some speakers there, light refreshments, and then of course, sledgehammering.
And hard hats.
And hard hats, yes, thank you for that.
So fun.
It will be fun, yes. So start lifting weights, right? I'm a little cautious about that. So with that, I welcome any questions that you might have.
Who's going to be sledgehammering?
So my understanding, and talking to Amy Matizik, who has done this before, is there will be a wide array of people that will be doing it. So board members, I believe, are some of them. So should you be there and have the capability of doing so?
So for me, can we take the sledge out of that and just get me a hammer?
Absolutely.
You
yes.
rock.
Accommodations will be available.
I don't know, you're always broken.
Are there any
Interested.
Oh, good. Great.
Wouldn't miss it.
Oh, Kathy, yes.
How do you think our transportation will look like? How do you think? Because it's both high schools. How will their our students from our high school go all the way to the Innovation Center?
That is such a good question. That's a challenge that we have to figure out. So the classes will be double blocked, meaning students will be there in the morning or in the afternoon, and it's separated by that lunch period. So the way I envision it, now I do have to talk to really smart people in the transportation department, and we do have a meeting tomorrow, is that there will be a route that will pick up in the morning and drop off at the Innovation Campus, come back right before lunch, bring those students back to their campus so they can finish out the day, and while they're there dropping off, they'll pick up the next group and bring them back. So I kind of see it as a figure 8 in my mind, with kind of the crossover being at lunchtime.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yes,
Good.
thank you.
Great.
Great question.
Yes.
Other questions or comments? Dr. Shank?
Kathy, are you interested in specific classes?
Yes, I love the biomedical field that they're doing. I'm really interested in doing that.
Great.
Yes.
Well, by the time you get there, we'll have our healthcare wing built out and ready for you.
Mr. Schwartz?
So a couple things.
Yes.
First of all, does anybody know why the letters of support are so important? A lot of neat logos, but there's no commitment of resources or cash behind it. Does anybody have a thought as to why?
It's credibility.
So when you go for grants, you have the local community and the industries that you're attempting to stand up. Having those that actually hire individuals with the skill sets that the grant is intended to create is extremely important and credible. And it's a sign that what we're going to produce will be job-ready graduates, should they choose to go in that field right after they graduate.
Yep.
Or even in internships this summer. So great job in getting a quantity of quality sponsors in that regard. Right?
Thank
It increases our chance of earning the grant recipient award. Secondly, congratulations on getting some sponsors.
Thank you.
Right? Our ability to do this in partnership with industry is critical. We will not be successful unless what we do with our kids is absorbable by the industry. And Jessica and her team worked very, very hard to make sure that we're, to repeat a term, we're trying to skate to where the puck is going to be, and engage a lot of experts from the area and various industries to make sure we're not generating yesterday's skill sets. One question as a follow-up to what we had several months ago, I think it was slide 4, if you could go back to that, please. Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, 5. There we go. Does this speak a little bit to what the evolution of what you're thinking the cycle is from first contact to actually getting to a point to where either someone is a fit or isn't a fit, or maybe they're thinking we're a fit but not now?
Yeah, most definitely.
Can you take a minute and explain what that looks like, please?
Yeah, I can. And it's, it's a learning process for me as well, because this isn't necessarily where I've gotten formal training. But what I have learned in this process is, obviously, we're trying to garner sponsorships and support. There's a long process of developing trust, of creating relationships with potential sponsors. And so what we've learned in some research that we've read is that process from developing trust and someone actually feeling like, okay, yeah, I do want to support this cause, can be about 18 months. And so this process, it did begin, honestly, with all of our CTE advisory meetings. It's been going on for quite some time. But this initiative really did begin essentially last June, right? And so, so what I am seeing, Ron, is the conversations that are at the introductory level are very, just kind of precursory, and just really understanding the industry partner, what their needs are, how they might feel like they'd want to contribute to this. What I'm seeing, though, is that the momentum that starts to build over time in working with these partners and building the relationships really starts to turn into something that's really exciting and kind of self-generating. So all of a sudden, when you can have someone who you have a relationship with and who you have built trust with, all of a sudden they're bringing in their colleagues and they're bringing in their former, college teammates or whatever the case might be. And so it does start to kind of matriculate. on its own, but it does take a level of effort and a level of conscientiousness to it. So yeah,
Yeah, it's a scientific process, not a luck process.
that's right. Yeah.
So what are you starting to sense in terms of the cycle from first introduction to where we get to a point to where there's a decision?
So, are you asking me what I perceive the timeline to be? I mean, the one that we have, and those that are kind of coming up at a more rapid rate, are built off of people that already have relationships with that person, right? And so, to the extent that I'm able to make a connection with someone who I've already built that with, that process is going to be much quicker, right? Just because then I have the credibility, kind of what Tiffany had mentioned earlier. But as far as cold calling and getting all the way through, I do think it's likely an 18-month process. It really is. And so we're at various stages of that with lots of different partners. I mean, we've had board members talking to their places of occupation. We've had family members. I mean, it's really kind of taken, and community members as well. It's kind of taken on a mind of its own.
Yeah, I'll add that we're really trying to continue to develop and foster the relationships we already have, including our families, and we do plan to send some of this information out about sponsorship opportunities to all of our families in the near future, so that they can help us get connected with those they have relationships with as well. And we're really taking opportunities at every community event that we have the opportunity to attend to continue to make new connections as well, and partnering with our D38 Foundation and making sure that we are working alongside them with their goals, so we can support each other.
Okay, thank you. So I suspect as you get more mature in this process, it'll get shorter.
Okay, great.
So let's revisit this again in 90 days and see.
Okay,
The more of this you do, the faster it gets, because the better at it we become.
sure.
And I would argue so do the partner entities, right?
Yep.
It's quicker to a yes, or no, or a maybe, or later.
Right. Well, and to Tiffany's point earlier, I mean, the credibility of the organizations that we have, I think that when there's an early adopter, I've heard that can kind of get some momentum of itself too. So we're excited.
And maybe just one final thought, if that's okay.
Sure.
Nobody's done this way, ever, at least in the states that we live in. No one's been able, that we can find, has been able to do this without an incremental ask for taxpayers to put in money. No one's done this in a year. And it's pretty impressive. So again, thanks to Ms. Andrews, Mr. Ridgway, and Jessica, what you and your team are doing and what the district is sponsoring. Right? We're not, this is not, the way we're doing is very innovative. What we're doing is not, and we're behind the 8 ball versus our peers and competitors. It's very important that we do this. And again, our matriculation rates are migrating down as they are everywhere else in the country. So for us to make sure that we're providing safe and long career runway opportunities for our students is a big deal.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
So I want to share also that 3 things. First of all, when I look at this binder you had put together back in 2022, 2023, and I remember this coming off of the piggyback off of, we did a bunch of engage and elevates at our different buildings and across the community, and that was in 2022. And 3 themes rose to the top in all of those engage and elevates. The 3 themes, and I keep sharing this because I like my files. The 3 themes that rose to the top was we need to get our CTE going and get more innovative. And that was a concept that spread across the spectrum in our entire community, from parents to teachers to students, no matter where you lived in the community, where your values are in the community. That was the common ground. And then the other 3 was, what are we doing with Grace Best? And the other one was another one that we still have not been able to accomplish, which is how do we get our teacher pay to the same level of our competitors, that we don't need to be number one, but how do we make sure we're at least in the top in El Paso County? But this is something that everybody wanted to get behind and was important. And as the momentum is growing, we see the excitement grow. And what I want to remind my fellow board members is, when we brought you on board here in D38, we didn't bring you to be a salesperson. So you are wearing many hats.
Yeah.
And again, similar to Miss Andrews, you're wearing so many hats and doing so much. And hopefully soon the end of the light of normalcy comes about. But I want to lean into and thank you for the work and the passion you have for this, and the dedication and the long hours. I want us to be very, very mindful and understanding that everybody is taking on multiple roles in our organization, and the roles that you're taking on as well. There comes a point where there's a capacity. So I want to make sure, like I said in my board comments, that you're taking care of yourself, because that's important as well. But I want to say how grateful I am for you just taking the bulls by the horn and just charging forward with this. So thank you so much.
Well, it's been a fun opportunity, for sure. Lifelong learning, isn't that what education's all about?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to us. I'm going to use a big sledgehammer. All right. Our next item on our agenda is C4, and that is our first reading and review of our J policies. And I would like to invite Mr. Frampton up to the podium. Good evening, Mr. Frampton.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you too, sir.
We are reviewing or going through a first read of our J policies. You'll notice that there are about 22 of them in the packet. There are well over 100 actually that we need to consider.
Wow.
So this is one bite of the whole meal, as we may say. And one of the things I want to talk about is how we might want to attack this a little bit more efficiently moving forward. But before then, the first thing that we're doing is we are taking a look at all the policies in the J suite. It's about 108 actually, and we are comparing them with CASB's recommendation. And one of the things that we've learned as we've gone through this process is that some of these policies haven't been reviewed in Lewis Palmer since 2016. There might even be a few before that. So we're definitely due to take a look at all of the language in all of our policies. Tonight, one of the things that we did is we identified about 18 of them that have no changes at all. They're going to maintain the exact same wording. We're going to just update the date and put a revised date of the April meeting when we do a second reading. And if you all approve of, we'll put that stamp on at that point. A couple things that are important to note. We've been doing a comparison of our policies with CASB. We've been running these policies by our nurse team if they're health related, by Jim Taylor and our district registrar if they're enrollment related. Chris Mack has been working very closely with us with the technology. So we're employing the team of folks to really spend some time, not just comparing with CASB, but looking to see if there's any recommendations unique to our community that we would like to make in the J policies. The ones before you tonight are pretty straightforward, and they don't appear to have a whole lot of extra components that we would need to consider for more thought in Lewis Palmer. So here they are. Here's a long list of policies, and they are all word for word similar to what CASB has. And then again, a second page of those. For those of you out there who are saying, man, that is a lot of work, you are right, and I appreciate you noticing. The vast majority of the credit for that work does not lie here with me, but it's Vicki and Arlene, and we have a team of folks who are spending a large amount of time going through and making those connections between CASB and Lewis Palmer. So it is a lot of work, and that's why we're going to talk about in a moment here a little bit more efficient way to possibly tackle this. There are 4 policies, as I've already mentioned, in which there are going to be some legal reference edits or some minor rewording, how the term truancy is defined, for example. We're going to add a section header, just a few little minor things, but the actual content of these 4 policies, like the others, are pretty much intact and going to remain the same. But we are following CASB's recommendation on these 4. Any questions before I go on to a recommendation on how to tackle this moving forward?
So I noticed these first sets, most of them are just legal cross-references. And a few things that we were able to take out. My question is, before we go to the next, and maybe this is better with your next presentation, when we cross-compare to CASB, which to our students, CASB stands for Colorado Association of School Boards. And it's a service, they provide legal services and they provide information advice. They keep up on legislation, so if a law changes, they can share with school districts, hey, this law has changed, this is how this could affect your policies. So just to give you guys a background. So.
Yep. And we rely on them for guidance for all of our policies. And one thing that is interesting that I've learned is if you look at other school districts across the state of Colorado, the vast majority of them use the same coding and the same language, so they're all coming from the same place. So.
And if there's something in one of our policies that, as long as it's still following the law of the land, that we have the ability to make sure it meets the standards for who we are here in D38.
That is correct. And we look through that lens of our community.
Yep.
So here's some thinking or some suggestions that we have to try to be a little bit more efficient with the remaining 84 policies that we need to review. If we continue to see policies that have a very close resemblance to CASB or an identical resemblance to CASB, Vicki and I had a conversation today and would like the board to consider moving them into a consent and having that done in one pass, and we would say that there are going to be no changes to our current policy. They're identical, and we'll be able to lop off a fairly substantial number of these policies through that process without having Vicki uploading, redlining, basically duplicating what is already in place. So that would be one category. Then the second category is if there's minor changes, we could continue doing a presentation pointing out what those minor changes are, just like this evening, and we can follow either a vote on first read because of the minor changes to them, or we could continue moving forward with the exact same process that we've currently had and bring that to a second reading. And then the third group, which is the one that I'm saving right now and we're not spending a lot of time on tonight, is those that we're going to be making some recommendations on the board considering some substantial changes or some deviations from CASB recommendations. And those, I think, would still be wise to have multiple readings and opportunity for discussion.
So our policy does require that the board has 2 readings, but when there are changes that don't change the content, such as typos that are fixed or the cross-references, it isn't really necessary for the board to vote on those very, very minor changes. So that is what we're asking you to consider is, would you still like us to bring those forward for a first and second read?
Team.
If you really, really enjoy reading it, I'll continue to bring them and give you that opportunity.
Mr. Norris.
I mean, I'm as one board member interested in seeing changes, maybe not necessarily typos, but other minor changes.
And that has been our cadence with the policy review thus far. We have been following that same procedure.
What you're suggesting makes sense to me.
Yeah, and Mr. Norris, if there's changes, we could follow the exact same cadence that we've been doing all year and bring them to a first reading, even the minor changes. But if we wanted to just say if there's no changes, which we saw in 18 of these tonight, that's where it would help our staff by moving them into consent, so we're not having to upload every single copy, every single document for you to be able to access that way. And if you have a question about those through a consent, you can just go onto our board docs, find that document, and still read it to your pleasure.
So we wouldn't be bringing those reviewed policies forward to the board for consideration, correct? Because there are no recommended changes. We would just alert the board that those policies have been reviewed and that there are no changes recommended.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that? It makes sense. I mean, if there's no changes or if it's a cross-reference, and they are in board docs, and we always have the liberty to pull things off of consent.
Yeah, I'm fine looking up the red line versions.
Concur. Thank you for the common sense recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Next up, we have Mr. Ridgway for our financial planning and analysis. This is item number C5. Hello, Mr. Ridgway. Which would you
Hello.
like us to click on first?
Well, I'm actually going to ask Melissa Andrews to come up, and we're going to talk about the capital recommendations. So this connects to what we just reviewed in terms of our strategic process and plan in this area. And March here, in terms of the cycle of budget development for the coming fiscal year, for the 25-26 fiscal year, March is a time when we want to establish what are those capital projects that we're going to be working on this coming summer, so that we can start to make plans in that direction. So Melissa's going to walk us through this one first.
Hello again. All right, so you guys have seen a lot of this, so I'm going to go through it fairly quickly, but just a few reminders on, again, we're operations and facility planning. And the capital, what is capital? Just making sure we remember it's a cost of at least $5,000, and that there are projects that can maintain assets in our building. It could be additions, renovations, purchasing or acquiring school vehicles, and that type of thing. We have two groups that help with this. We have a capital site audit team and the capital prioritization committee. Oh, thanks. Okay. This is Brett's slide. He'll talk to you later. And again, the process, we do the capital site walks on an annual basis. We are looking at every nook and cranny of these buildings. We have a master capital list that is a living document that we continue to add to. Any principal, any staff member, any building manager can add to this list as they need. We have the prioritization committee. Once we have that list, about this time of the year, we go through there and we look at the items in priority order. We put a priority to them and then rank order them. And so we're really going to focus on mandatory items, which in this case is going to be our contingency. And then our priority ones, because that is about all we made it through with funding. So that's our health, safety, ADA, code compliance, and system failures, or anything that keeps an employee from doing their job on a daily basis. So the amount of funding determines the number of projects we're able to do. We take and rank order all of the projects in priority one, cut it off at the funding availability, and make that recommendation to our chief business officer, and we will be making this recommendation to you this evening. At the bottom, it's a note to basically make sure we all understand that the items come with a ballpark cost. And so if we come in under budget, all that money goes back into the contingency pot. Once we find out we have funds available, we will then go through and go by rank order on the next available projects. So right now, we are currently working on identifying replacement cycles on our fleet of vehicles, our roofs, our HVAC, and those type of items. Yes.
Can you share with Kaylee and Kathy what capital means in our realm?
Yeah, go back here. So capital, we walk through your buildings and we're looking at anything that needs replaced. Your carpet, your lockers, broken mirrors, anything like that that is big. If it's small enough that we can do it in a maintenance budget, we put in work orders for your building manager or our team to fix them. But if it's so expensive the buildings can't afford to do that, I put them in this list and we try to get things done that way. Any
you.
questions? Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. All right, and so right now, as we stand, we currently have 163 items that have been identified across the district as a capital need. Keep in mind, they're anything from things that we've identified through capital walks or up to wish list items. Somebody wants something that's exciting that's going to be a while before we can ever actually give it funding because it's not a priority in the day-to-day operations. And then 41 of those this year hit a priority 1, and that total is $3,259,800. This is just a little information for you on what we accomplished with the 24-25 budget, if you care to look at that. And I guess to explain, above the line are items that were prioritized last year and approved through the board. Anything below the line were things that, the 2 asterisk items were rollover from the previous year, and then we have a lot of things that were emergencies. Issues with the septic and the leach field and an issue with the truck that blew an engine. And so most of these are issues that came up as emergencies.
And just to clarify, those items come to you if there's your contracts or whatever that you approve in the consent agenda. That's when those will be coming to you. So they're not just happening without your knowledge. They're still happening with the approval process.
So speaking of the budget process, this is not the first time either of you have done this kind of work. Therefore, what's your experience? What % do you set aside for contingencies, emergencies, and things like that, typically?
So we typically like to go into a year with something around 10% of the budget target and as a contingency. And I try, and I'll aim low on that. I mean, I don't need to go 10 or, go up to 12. But if it's 8, 9, 10%, that's kind of what we're aiming for.
Right, and it's 10% of the capital improvement.
Right, of that total. So if this, this was a $3 million total,
Right.
for instance, you see it at 2.9 million, then a good $300,000 or
Right.
so contingency would have been what we'd have gone into the year with.
Thank you.
Okay, so we talked about what happens if we have extra money, but if we do not have extra money, if we found out the actual quotes come in higher, we back out those projects. So say if we have, 13 priorities that come forward and we can't afford number 13, we try to get all the ones above it done first. That way we don't go over this budget. So our recommendations for the 25-26 school year start with that $237,000 contingency. And then the Bear Creek has audio enhancement that was already in process through other schools, so they're one of 2 remaining schools that have not had that done. Most everything else within here are going to be ADA compliance issues. IT has some system replacements, just a replacement cycle to keep up with technology. And so as you look through there, if you have any specific questions, let me know.
So again, just to clarify, these are in a priority sequence order, starting with the preschool space needs for licensing there, and everything down there is we would do those in that sequence, going straight vertically down that list.
And just so that you guys are aware of all the rest of the priority ones, they're here in rank order. And so 18 through 35, we have, again, in priority order. So if we had money available, we would then go do the replacement of the maintenance vehicle and then the spray foam of the interior roof. So that's how they would come in order of additional projects if we have money at the end of the year next year.
I'm sorry, just going back to that prior slide, you'll see that we have one kind of below the line there. It's called under additional, and that's an audio enhancement project for Palmer Lake Elementary School. And so audio enhancement is this project with multi-year project that we've had, 3-year project to go through each of the schools and upgrade their audio systems. And so we did 3 schools in the first year, we did 3 schools this current year, and these are the final 2 schools left, so that all 8 schools over the course of this cycle have a new platform for the intercom system, and really also for individual rooms providing audio quality for how teachers can present their lessons. So the reason that one's below the line is because we believe we're going to be able to fund that out of this current year from in our IT operations budget. So we're able to cover that one there. And then Bear Creek is the one left for next year's capital plan.
Question. So with the priority list, and we're going down, let's say hypothetically, one of our elementary schools or Lewis Palmer Middle School, for example, wanted to make a capital improvement happen earlier, and they say they wanted to raise funds from their PTO. Not advocating that that's how we solve our problems. I'm saying if the parents wanted, if that was something that was important to them, how does that play into this?
So if it is an existing capital project that's on the list and they just want to do it prior to this and they're funding it, then it comes off of our capital list just under our projects list, because we're going to track all of them. And then funding gets put back into contingency for the next highest priority.
So if we have staff that we need, let's say Prairie Winds wants to upgrade their playground and they need staff to help, or Kilmer or any elementary wants to do something with their playground equipment. I would assume that would take our staff to do that. Would that be able to move them up the list if they were able to fund it?
I'm not quite sure I understand.
They would come, that project then would come off of this list and become a separate project funded in a different way.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Right, we could do that work and kind of lead that project, and we should and need to do that to make sure it gets done to whatever technical and code requirements that we have. But if it's no longer going to need to be sourced, the funding sourced through this process, then it can come off of that list and then be pursued separately that way. And so we do some things like this, like with the middle school, as we were talking to Ms. Harrell the other day. There's, she might want to do some painting over the summer, and she has money to fund that through carryover budget or something like that. That's great, right? And we can support that and facilitate that. And it's helpful then that she has that funding source to pursue that, as she sees fit.
Otherwise, they have to wait till the list gets
Correct.
checked off.
Correct.
Does the list get changed each year? Or do previous things that weren't funded always stay at the top?
No, so we reevaluate all the projects on an annual basis because something may become less important or more important, or something new comes on the list that takes priority over everything. So every single year, we evaluate the projects and re-rank them.
And even more frequently, if you call that strategic presentation we made earlier, we wanted it to be a living document. And so when we know more, we will update that, whether it's just a cost update because of a tariff concern or something like that, or again, something new just popped up and we need to put that on the list and get it ranked. So it's not just really a once a year, an annual process. It's really going to become more of an ongoing day-to-day. Here's what we know as of today.
And so on the back side of this, what you're not seeing is I have another spreadsheet that we go through and we monitor all of these projects. In addition to any other project, you were asking about things that may not necessarily have been funded by capital, but it's still a project for our facilities team. We're still monitoring and tracking them because we have grant-funded projects, we have school-funded projects, PTO-funded projects. So there's lots of ways money comes in, but we are monitoring all the projects as a whole in a whole other location besides this capital list.
Okay.
All right, and again, just looking at the remaining priority one projects, and then going back to your question, will they still be in this order next year? Not necessarily. So you'll see a whole new list next year. But as everything we know today, this would be the next list. Okay, any questions besides the ones we've already discussed?
Team, any questions or thoughts? Mr. Schwartz?
I may have missed this, and if so, my apologies. The slides aren't numbered, but the 24, 25 slide, what does the line in the middle designate?
That was where we were talking above the line, as everything was categorized as an approved capital project at this point in time last year. Everything below the line was using contingency or remaining funds to deal with mostly emergencies or rollover projects that didn't quite get finished the year before.
So given that we're a little over halfway through the year, how many of these projects are underway and/or completed?
The majority of the projects are complete. We are just wrapping up a few miscellaneous things. And so one of the things we're working on with our staff is apparently in the past there was a lot of urgency to get them done as soon as the money was released. And that put a lot of strain on our staff. And so what we're working on is being more strategic about spacing them throughout the year and even holding money over until as soon as school's out. So we may have an expensive project that has to, or a lengthy project that needs the entire summer. If we don't get funds until July 1, it's really hard to get a long lead time project done. So if we hold them throughout the year, start as soon as school's out, that gives us July and August to get those projects done. So we're being a little more strategic about implementing the project timelines.
Good job, thank you.
Yes. How long would it take, or how many tasks would you be able to finish in a year?
This is 1 year's worth of projects right here.
Right.
And that doesn't include the regular maintenance that goes on in your building. So there's other things that are happening. These are just the big ones.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Good work. Any other questions?
Hey, just a comment. So let's take another look at this list, because you're right, Kathy, it's a long list for a relatively small school district, right? With a relatively small number of buildings. Speaks exactly to your priority 4 concept, which is what kind of return are we getting on the assets we have, right? Are we constantly pouring money into a hole? And is it a quality investment of our taxpayers' money to do that? Are we getting the educational and safety return that we require in order to achieve our mission? So this is a wonderful example of it, right?
And the other thing we really want to do is try to get the emergency items on the lower part of that out of the equation. We want to be proactive instead of reactive. So if we can get ahead of these replacement cycles instead of Band-Aiding along the way, we're going to be in a better spot.
Right, exactly right.
Yeah, I think it's some of the good news, actually, that we have, quote unquote, only $3.4 million worth of priority 1 projects, and then we can do $2.5 million of those next year, and hopefully not just replace with another $2.5 million of priority 1s. We can start getting in further into other priorities as we go forward. Because we have been investing a lot in these last few years since we came out of the COVID time. We've gotten back to this $3 million a year of investment. We are tweaking it down to $2.5 million next year, which is part of the strategy for next year's budget and kind of a reaction to changes that we're seeing in School Finance Act funding for next year. So that's kind of an opportunity that we have, that we can change that into basically into compensation for staff, but still doing $2.5 million worth of projects is a good list.
Before we continue,
Yeah, so Kathy was going to give us a reminder at 8 o'clock, because we promised our students that they could get home and finish up homework so that they can get a good night's sleep as we're just wrapping up the school time frame before spring break. So we will go ahead and thank our students for participating this evening, and thank you parents for bringing them, and allow you to go ahead and get on your way.
I want to say thank you for letting us be here. We're really, really excited. We're really grateful, and we really hope that our school district gets bigger and gets better. Thank you.
one quick question. Who had to dress up as the leprechaun today for your fundraiser?
Mr. Schultz, because our original who has to be Mr. Bonzer, had sick and had to leave early, so our runner-up had to dress up, and he's gonna, when Mr. Bonzer gets back, he's gonna dress up too. It's gonna be really funny.
We need to see some pictures, I think, from that.
You might have to come back.
Thank you so
Wait,
much.
she's
for
got
doing
them. Hang on, it's real time. She has them.
Okay.
How do we show this to everybody?
We'll get that put on we'll get that put on.
Yes.
Maybe you can email that over.
Have Ms. Harrell share that with us so that we can
Thank
post
you
it
so
on
much
social.
for this opportunity.
Thank you both very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you're welcome to stay. You don't have to if you need to get back. Mr. Ridgway.
And you can tune in online when you get home.
That's right.
Especially for Mr. Ridgway's spreadsheet.
The fun part's just coming.
Okay, sir.
So, so yeah, at this point in the year, the FP&A is really going to be started to be focused on next year's budget, right? And so we did a little bit last month. We're doing it more this month again with this capital presentation. And then what you see here, in terms of normal files, we have the normal enrollment report, we have the normal monthly financial report, and the history. There's a couple other pieces that I wanted to go over with you, if you don't mind, and I would start with this School Finance Act presentation. And
Is this a projection file? Yes.
yes,
Okay.
high-level expense projection. So yeah, I said presentation instead of projection. Sorry. And this is the starting point for the budget for next year, and we've talked a bit about this already. And the reason I wanted to refer back to this is just to circle back with what I just indicated there about the reason we wanted to drop the capital project funding from $3 million to $2.5 million going to 25-26 was a reaction into one of the things that we're seeing and concerns that we're having about funding for next year, and that is the change in student count averaging. We brought up the change in student count averaging a few months ago, and at that time I didn't really seize upon it as a huge risk for us, because at that time we were talking about a 4-year averaging, where we have traditionally been a 5-year averaging cycle, and it going to only to 4 years. And now, if it goes to 4 years, that would be somewhat of more of a moderate change. But there's also quite a bit of energy that might result in us going to a 3-year averaging. And so the reason I'm highlighting this here, right here, is what you see in this column here for student count averaging is what we've seen over these recent years with 5-year averaging. And if it were to suddenly change to 3-year averaging, where this year we were at 64.3, it would drop to 8.7. And so that large of a change would cause a risk to a budget next year, and of about $400 and some thousand. And so that's why the opportunity was to connect reducing our capital investment with this, so that we could continue on into next year, proposing to offering a change in compensation for our employees that would approximate the rate of inflation. If we were not able to do that, we'd have to come in with something lower than rate of inflation, and that was something that the Financial Transparency Committee really wanted us to try and achieve, was maintain that rate of inflation, our average pay change going to the rate of inflation. And so this is what would happen, again, even if our actual funded student count stayed literally the same, that the change in student count averaging, because we've been on a slightly decreasing path, as the graph would indicate here, in recent years. Again, not materially. There are other districts that have huge impacts in this regard. Ours is much less than what they're experiencing, but still something that we need to pay attention to and take into account.
Mr. Schwartz, you had
I just want to make sure we're designating, and you've got columns for this, the operating schools versus Monument Academy.
Correct.
So the figures you referred to as the exposure, was that operating schools or entire district?
Yeah, because the way that we do this every single year is when we see what our October count is, and that gets finalized in our final school school finance numbers get calculated, we can break that down by individual school, so we know exactly what the pattern is for Monument Academy, completely separate from the operated schools. And so when it comes to the student count averaging piece, we know how much of that should be allocated to Monument Academy and how much of that should be allocated to the operated schools. And because they have opened their secondary school these last few years, as they've been on kind of a growth trajectory, small but limited growth trajectory, most of what we've seen in terms of the student count averaging has been allocated towards the district operated schools. And so that's why you would see, if this were to play out as the way it's being presented here with 3-year averaging, and that causing this drop of 55.6 funded students, vast majority of that would hit the operated schools, while only a small number would hit Monument Academy.
Okay, so it's on a per student basis.
It is, per student basis and on actual history.
Okay, thank you.
So what I think is interesting about this, since we're still in discussion mode, is D38, we're looking at 55 students. Other school districts across the state that are being affected by this, they stand to lose millions of dollars out of their budget because of their declining enrollment. And what I've always found interesting about this discussion at the state, Brett, and you're the expert, not me, but I always look at what our October count is versus our end of school year count. And our end of school year, when we look at our gains and our losses and where it all kind of comes out in the wash, I find it very intriguing and interesting that the state doesn't think about that, because those are still students. Of course, we're going to educate, but we're not receiving the funding. If they come into our schools, let's say Bear Creek, and there's 19 new students, those are 19 students that are unfunded students that, of course, we are going to educate our kids and take care of our kids. But it's interesting that at the state level, they always talk about the averaging, but we don't talk about the students, especially in a military community, for example.
Yeah, correct. I mean, that's one of the biggest criticism. I mean, using a single day count is a very antiquated style. And so because we have so much mobility within Colorado, even if you remember when I was presenting a few months ago and showing you that, hey, of these 5,000 students that we had in the operated schools for this year, 1,000 of them weren't in our operated schools last year. You know, and that means October count to October count. So that's to your point. They moved in. They came in after October count of 24, and then they were there in the October count of 23, and then they were there by the time we hit October count of 24. So all of that churn, and some of it is growth. You know, what's the traditional season to move your family is in the spring, right? And so all those students are coming in and popping up, and none of the funding, there's no funding associated with any of that at all. So it's something that really does need to come, an item that needs to change into something that reflects that new reality of more mobility that we see these days versus back in 1994 when a single count date, made more sense.
Is there more mobility in Colorado than say other states?
I think to answer that question, objectively, I would need to do some research on that. Anecdotally, I think that's true. As Tiffany mentioned, just the military component of what we have, just by nature, creates a lot of mobility in and out of our area.
Is there any interest in changing an antiquated method?
There's some interest. It's been politicized a little bit, unfortunately, and so there's hesitation, and it's usually hesitation because districts right now that are benefiting from this current, don't want to change to something that is more fluid and more reflective of current. And so, the reason that we have a School Finance Act of 1994 still in place that we're trying to move away from is because people were more concerned about what they were going to lose than what they were going to move towards and what they were going to gain and how they were going to better serve students going forward. And so that's been kind of an unfortunate reality of the political climate since I've been working up at the Capitol these last, 10 to 15 years, that's been very frustrating to see that. Okay. And so, and I think maybe we went over this slides last month. I wasn't here last month, but again, if we are able to bring in this $500,000 adjustment from the capital program, it helps our new money number, which helps us offer what I'm projecting to be a 2.9% average across the district pay change for our staff going to next year. Which, today they just released a revenue forecast for the state, which didn't really provide a whole lot of clarity. But one of the data points that's in there was to say, hey, the national rate of inflation is still at 2.8%, and the Colorado rate of inflation at 2.3%. If we're able to do this 2.9%, that really achieves the goal that the FTC put out there for us, which was to stay above that. And if we did not do this $500,000 change in the capital, then we would risk coming in down in the low twos and be underneath that rate of inflation.
The other thing I think that's noteworthy is this is a reoccurring expense. Once you take it, it doesn't go away, right? It pays, salaries, and those things are into perpetuity.
That's a great clarification, and that's why it would take something like the annual capital program to be a resource for this, rather than saying, hey, we're pulling this out of reserves or out of fund balance, because that's
Right.
just a one-time investment.
Exactly right.
We want to make this change and say, well, this is what's going to come.
Right. And so what it means to us beyond next year, provided this is the model that we go forward with, is a lower amount of dollars to invest in capital improvements. So then it's really the task goes to Mr. Ridgway and Ms. Andrews to innovate their way through this. Very doable, but not straightforward and simple. So we just need to really have a crisp understanding of the task in front of us. It's not out of the norms, not different than what maybe a commercial company might have, but I think it's fair for us to make sure that the public understands it and that we understand it, so we support the team to make sure they have the tools to innovate through this.
Thank you. Yeah, this is what every company, these are decisions that every company has to wrestle with.
Yep.
And
Okay.
so we want to run this district like a business, and that's the challenge that I'm up to.
I had a question for you.
Sure.
And it may not be in this particular set of slides. It might be on a different set of slides. And I spoke to this a little bit earlier. Per pupil funding for special education.
Mm-hmm.
Colorado has raised it a bit. The federal government is supposed to fund it at 40%, and they're only at about 13%. What does that mean for special education versus student per pupil revenue in D38?
Well, thank you for asking that. I can show you something here in my regular financial report that does have a table of contents on it, so it can take you to a place where you can answer that question. That would be this one that says Special Education Programs Summary. And you even have, when you look at this file online, off the Financial Transparency website, we have the bookmarks right here, so you can just click right into this. And admittedly, they'll take you to a spreadsheet with lots of numbers that isn't going to be necessarily fun to read, but it can show you the answer to that type of question. And I'm actually going to move here to the second page here, which is the budget for this year. So the 24-25 budget for special education component of general programs shows that we will receive $2.3 million worth of revenue. This is the ECEA revenue, not the IDEA revenue, so the state component. Against that $2.3 million worth of subsidy revenue, we're going to projected to spend $8.6 million worth of spend to provide the required services for all those students that are in the special education program. So that means a net cost of $6.3 million of subsidy that comes out of every student's PPR to fund that shortfall. Right here, and so continuing across this in this highlighted area, what that means is on a gross number per student in the district, and that's
What's EXP?
expense. And so the gross per pupil spend for every student that contributes to this is $1,300. And if you take that $2.3 million worth of revenue on it, that the net is what did I say? $1,300. That's net. The net is a little over $1,000. So what that, I think, if you calculate those together, it's like 73% of that is still general fund subsidy. And so about 27% of this is supported by the actual ECEA revenue
From other students.
from other students.
Is your denominator using all students in the district?
All students.
Or not just operating schools?
Right, all students. Well, no, I'm sorry. This is operated students, you're right. Sorry, this is operated students, because Monument Academy does operate with their own special education program. Their special education services are not handled by our program in general. They are doing it on their own, so they receive their own portion of both the ECEA and the IDEA funding, which we've already remitted to them for that purpose. So yeah, this is a big part of cost, and for us in El Paso County, as I look at all the statewide data, we do have a disproportionate impact on special education services here that I've always been told is strongly connected to the military in mobility that comes in here for the compassionate assignment.
Interesting.
Boy, it would make sense then for that incremental military funding to go more towards bridging that gap, wouldn't it?
Yes, but the funding that we get from the federal government there's the impact aid money that is related to that, and it's just, again, it's another drop in the bucket that helps, but doesn't really solve.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for answering that question and helping me find the page.
Sure. I know we're reaching the saturation point here, but just one more thing I wanted to draw your attention to is this file here that's called the 25-26 normalizations. And the reason I just want your attention to this, or your eyes on this, is this is part of the conversations that we're currently having with our school principals in terms of determining how we move towards this student-based budgeting, the student-based financial management style. And so this is the process, again, that I developed about 10 or 12 years ago, and have adopted it and brought it here and adapted it for our purposes. And the point of this is to determine what is the equitable amount of funding for every school based on the unique programming and operational characteristics of that school. And so the way this works is starting every school, every student at every school out at the same exact number, $7,628 is what we'd be projecting for 25-26, and then making adjustments to that number based on these unique things that happen, or things that we don't want to cause penalty or opportunity to students in individual schools because of these topics, meaning distributed special education, meaning the cost of employee benefits. Going down to extracurricular programs is such a big thing, and this is something that I think is going to be worthy of conversation at some point in the time in the future, that really what we do, because we have such a great emphasis on our extracurricular programs in this district, but there's a big cost to it, and every student is contributing to that, whether they are participating in those programs or not. And so I think as we get further down into this process and we can have more of those conversations to a more informed level, then we can make decisions in that regard. Yes?
When you're having these conversations with our principals, can you give examples of other districts that do a student-based building budget, and how do we ensure that if this is the right direction to go, which this is what it's looking like, that there's collaboration?
So the collaboration, I want to speak to that first, and that's really presenting this process and the math that goes with it to to our leadership and saying, are these the right topics for us to quantify and make adjustments for? Are there more topics? Are there fewer topics that we should be considering? So like one that's particularly interesting that we're working on this year, that again we present to all principals and ask for their, or ask for what their observations on it, is what I call Lewis Palmer Middle's volatility. As it being only a 2-grade school, they're more susceptible to an individual class being particularly small or particularly large. So if we were on a strict student-based budgeting model, that could result in a lot of change in their budget from year to year, like we could have seen in this coming year. The 6th grade class we have this year, meaning their incoming 7th graders, is really kind of a small number. And so that could see a pattern of this year where they have 747 students, to next year going down to 684, to the year after that being back up to 726. So if we were on a strict per pupil budgeting, all of a sudden we'd be saying, well, you're gonna have to adjust, $400,000 down next year, only to add $400,000 back the next year, and that's some volatility. That's just that's destructive at that point. And so just being able to demonstrate that and then check that the rest of our leadership sees that, understands that, agrees with that. That's the kind of collaboration then that we want to have in providing what becomes then this final result of a per student funding target. Now,
I'll add that this has been a multi-year conversation with our principals moving in this direction and looking for ways we can find efficiencies to share costs across the district, such as the CIC, in looking at sharing staff as an example and finding that efficiency. So those are collaborative conversations that are ongoing, and actually spending all day tomorrow, again, meeting with principals around this topic.
Just a clarifying question, actually, for Ms. Upchurch. Was your collaboration question specific to the way Ms. Wetstein and Mr. Ridgway answered it, or was it a broader collaboration thought?
No, it was more to what Ms. Wetstein and Mr. Ridgway. I wanted to make sure that our principals their voices are heard as these conversations are happening, as they're advocating for their buildings.
and what I'll say as well is that when there is a situation that it implies a significantly different funding level, we want to ease our way into that. We don't want to still flip a switch. And so when I was making this presentation, having these conversations last year, I said we're not gonna go here yet because things would break if we just flip this switch. But in the end, this is a path that we have to walk if we want to manage the fact that there are large class sizes at Bear Creek Elementary School and small class sizes at Palmer Lake and Kilmer. This is the balance that we're going to have to try and manage and navigate to work that through. So this is a fairly complicated process, I will admit, and the numbers are all here. And I wanted just to give you a taste of it, and that's really, honestly, all I'm giving you at this point. It goes pretty deep in that, but again, it's been well proven, a well proven model to work for many years. You ask what other districts are doing it. I mean, some of the presentations that I've given nationally, this has drawn attention from big school districts in Virginia and Indiana and such. So there is a certain segment of education out there that does really like to pursue their budget conversations with this type of style.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Stay tuned, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Really interested in learning more.
I'll look forward to it.
Anything else we need to have our attention focused on before we move on?
I don't think so. I just would say, going back to that capital project list, again, what we look for is if there's any questions or anything you'd like to raise, in these next couple of weeks, okay, to please let us know. Otherwise, we will start to begin making our plans towards that list and getting projects slated to start working this summer.
Be curious to see how the budget forecast, we got a month and a half left, right,
Yeah. Yep.
for the state?
I was thinking about this year seems to be, I've been doing this budget more out of my own intuition than I think I've done any of the others in for several years.
Quick question on state budget,
Yeah.
because they gave you the revenue forecast for the 25-26 fiscal year.
Yeah.
Do they have a revenue forecast for the finish of the 24-25 year? They've got to be close. It's almost over.
Yes, I have not seen anything on that or read anything on that.
Did they provide a graphical trend of a 5 or 10 year?
I'm laughing because
Look.
it's the state.
No. Unfortunately.
Okay.
We'll see that about May.
Yeah, I guess my point is if the physical dollars that come into the state are converse to the trends of how the state is using them, or if the state is shifting them to other places, then it's up to us as voters to decide if that's a good or a bad thing.
Yes. Yes.
And if we choose not to do anything about it, then it's at our peril. We
Yes.
shouldn't complain about it.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks.
Okie dokie. Moving on to our D section, action items. D1, consider and approve the process for superintendent search. We have two motions following our board retreat. We had some discussion, or I guess our retreat, we had some discussion around what are some possibilities. We obviously had voted, just for context, had voted to have Ms. Wetstein be our interim. Through recommendation and consultation throughout with different professionals, there was to keep that, and we made that date tentatively June 30th, but there has been an appetite that we've heard feedback that we'd like to see something done and something more permanent of next steps and decisions made by the end of the spring semester. So that's where we are.
Ms. Upchurch, I know for me, I'd personally like to move to approve the superintendent search process of internally posting the position of superintendent for Lewis Palmer School District 38.
I'd like to second that motion.
I as well.
So what's the motion? To approve
Well, legally, we cannot just promote Ms. Wetstein, so we must post an internal posting.
Correct.
So I would like to move forward with that.
By law, I think it's called the Equal Pay Act, we do have to internally post, and we can do a timeline on what that looks like. But before we go there, is there discussion on the motion?
Do you need me to re-motion that? Clear.
Can you read your motion for Vicki to take notes? Or you got them? Okay.
With the second by Dr.
Okay. Is there discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz?
So as one board member's opinion, my opinion is as follows. There are very highly qualified candidates right in front of us. But we also are wards of the community, and we also are elected by the community, and there's a degree of diligence that is important to do to prove that, in fact, we have the right person for the right role at the right time. And by looking externally, it validates that. So I'm in favor of making sure that we do a degree of diligence to prove what we're thinking and be able to stand up to any scrutiny.
Any other discussion?
I discussed during board comments the fact that we got a lot of input, advice, guidance from our community already, and it all pointed in one direction for the most part. It wasn't unanimous. I think an internal posting for doing that is the best way to take their guidance and go forward. And I realize that everybody may not feel the same. This is just my thoughts on this.
Any other discussion? What I found interesting also is when we were hearing feedback, and I as one board member, concur that we have individuals in our school district that know who we are in D38, that are very qualified and very capable. And doing an internal posting does not preclude us from doing the due diligence and the work of vetting to make sure we have the right fit. But the professionalism and the motivation has been pretty strong, and so I appreciate that. And I appreciate Ms. Wetstein, you stepping into this role and for the second time, and really pushing us along and moving us along and keeping us going while also doing another position at the same time. So you're holding down two roles, and so thank you.
It's definitely a team effort.
Any other discussion? Okay, well, Ms. Wood.
Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Mr. Norris.
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz.
Nay.
Dr. Shank.
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Aye. Okay. With this also, we will need there will be a timeline that we can discuss at we should and will put on our, please put on our agenda for our April work session to discuss when and what that posting looks like, and the process for board interviews, when will we close it, how will we engage with our community on this as well, and what does that look like legally and all the things. So, okay. Next item is D2, consider approve D policy revisions, and this is a second reading. And we heard from last month, we heard for our second readings on that, on our first readings. And so, here we are. I would entertain a motion to amend, accept, approve.
Ms. Upchurch, I move to approve revisions to the fiscal management policies DB, DH, DJ, DJA, DJE, and DKC as presented and recommended by the district administration.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, well, seeing none, then Ms. Wood, would you take the roll?
Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Mr. Norris.
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz.
Aye.
Dr. Shank.
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Aye. Our next item, D3, approval of consent agenda.
I'd like to make, President Upchurch, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? Nope. Okay, well, seeing none, then Ms. Wood.
Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Mr. Norris.
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz.
Aye.
Dr. Shank.
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Aye. Okay, F, future agenda planning. On our April work session, we will discuss the graduation requirements task force, another Grace Best facility update, our superintendent hiring process update, administrator position discussion, and our B policy discussion that we had discussed at our last work session. And then April 22nd, tentatively, is our student representatives from Lewis Palmer High School, recognition of D38, our advance award recipients. And that is with the Education Foundation. And, right, isn't that what that one is?
Correct,
Yep.
yes.
Yep. And then second reading for J, our next round of J, our first reading for B, possible curriculum, priority 2 update, and student fees, CIC update, and an update on Grace Best. Is there anything else we need to add to those agendas?
President Upchurch, I would like to ask our group here if we need some time, additional time during the work session to work through issues related to timelines for superintendent, internal superintendent search.
Okay.
If we might need some more time. I was thinking we might.
We can look at what we have on that work session. We can either extend the work session time, if it pleases the board, or we can adjust some things that are on our agenda for our work session. Sir?
Just since we had a little confusion this month, I showed on the 8th.
Yes, it is on the 8th. Yeah, he was trying to play an early April Fool's joke on us by calling it April 1st, and I fell right for it.
Extra leprechauns.
Wait a minute. I didn't even notice.
And you wonder why I ask these questions.
The only thing I have on April 8th is I do have to be, I have to be somewhere at 1 o'clock on the 8th. That
So
is,
if we went to noon,
yeah, that would be enough time for me
you have
personally.
enough time?
Does that work for you, Mr. Brown? Mr. Norris, does going to noon on April 8th work for you? Okay, Ms.
And
Wood,
and the first for Mr. Norris.
what did I just say?
Nothing, you're good.
Okay, well,
I'm not following.
okay. Well, then with that, then we are adjourned. Thank you all.